Your podcast doesn't grow because you make episodes. I think something that as podcasters, we think we record, we edit, we publish, we're good. We're done. We did our job. That's all we have to do, right? If that was it, if that's all it took, right, then every single podcast would be successful. There are some amazing podcasts out there that get unnoticed or just don't make it because they don't get promoted. They don't get marketed right. So it's not just recording, editing, publishing. That's the first 25%. Then you have to market it. You've got to get it out there. And I know for myself, when I started podcasting, I would think, why isn't this growing? People love sports. I'm talking about sports. So why didn't it grow? Marketing. So hitting publish, that's not the finish line. That's the starting line. And so in this little episode, we're going to talk about marketing. That simple, that easy, why it matters, why it actually works and what works, and then also just how to promote your podcast. So we'll get into that. So why do podcasts tend to fail? There's a lot of reasons, and we've talked about it in past episodes, but one of the other main reasons is that, and I can attest to this for myself, is I focus all of my attention 100% to the recording part, the editing, and the publishing part. That's it. Then I think I'm done. And then I spend 0% telling people that I have a podcast. And for myself, I'm recording this and making this because these are things I need to do for my own podcast because I haven't been. I haven't been telling people. I haven't been putting it out there. I'm putting it on YouTube. I'm doing all this. And then I'm creating clips and putting clips onto Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all of that, and Reels. But I'm not saying where those Reels are coming from. I'm not saying and letting people know that I have a podcast where I talk about sports. And I also have a podcast, which is this one, where I want to help people start podcasts. I don't promote it enough. I don't tell people about it. And so I'm telling you this because I'm also telling myself this. This is something I personally need to work on. So we're in this together. And so something that you need to realize if you are a podcaster and you're struggling getting viewership or listenership is that Apple and Spotify, they're not going to push out and market new shows for you and me. I mean, if you're a celebrity or famous athlete or something like that, that's going to be a little different. They'll probably let people know that, this is a new podcast from whatever, Brad Pitt. That is a little different than me having a podcast about sports or having this podcast. Apple and Spotify don't care. The market is what the market is. And if I'm not marketing it, no one's going to listen to it because Apple and Spotify aren't going to help in that sense. The cool thing, though, that Apple and Spotify do help with, which is something else I will talk about later on, and not in this episode, but later in other episodes, is that Spotify and Apple actually make awesome marketing material for you and stuff you can use for your podcast to get out there. So that's really cool. But again, Apple and Spotify, they're not there to market your podcast for you. That's something you're going to have to do on your own. And so something that we've got to reframe in our heads and rethink about is that low numbers on your podcast episodes does not mean it's a bad podcast. Please know that. Because I honestly think and I believe if you have a story to tell, if you own a business, that kind of thing, people do want to listen to that. So your idea is not bad. It's not a bad podcast. Okay? The reason you don't have those downloads or those listens is because there's low visibility, because you're not marketing it. And that's, again, what this episode is all about. Word of mouth, all of social media. Let people know you have a podcast. And so if you're creating content, if you're creating a podcast and you're consistent and you're putting out episode after episode after episode every week, you don't have a content problem. I'm sure your ideas are great. People want to listen to you. So it's not that, it's that you have a promotion or a marketing problem. That's the problem. And that's what I'm trying to solve in this episode for you. And how do we figure that out? How do we make sure we're marketing our podcasts in the correct way? And so, like I said earlier, how, you're just getting started with your podcast when you start promoting it. That's true, because really 20 to 25% of your podcast is the creation part. Like, again, it takes less, like this podcast will be 30 minutes long at the most. So there's 30 minutes, and then I'll spend 30 minutes editing it. So there's an hour, right? So there's an hour that I've spent creating this podcast, editing it, and publishing it. That's nothing. The promotion side of it, the marketing side of it, that's everything else on the other side. And that's stuff that you need to be doing for multiple days, not just like you send out a tweet or a story on your Instagram. Like, share all you can, and not even just on social media. Word of mouth. Tell your friends and family that you're starting a podcast, because you're going to get listeners right away, right there, just from your friends and family, from word of mouth. So promoting it is 75 to 80% of the work. Creating it, again, is 20, 25%. And I think something that I kind of hit on in another episode, but promoting your podcast, you're not going to annoy people. Like, it's not annoying, especially if you're doing it in a organic way on your social media profiles and your social media platforms. So all you're doing is getting your voice out there. You're getting your podcast out there. That's what that is. So don't think of it as annoying, like I'm going to send out another story and da-da-da-da. Listen, stories and reels, people, they're going to swipe anyways. So they're going to click through a story. They're going to swipe through a feed. Maybe they'll see it, maybe they won't. But the other side of it, if they're swiping and they see your face come up 3 different times, they might be like, oh, what is this guy doing? Because I've now seen his face 3 different times talking. Looks like he's talking about something. Maybe I'm interested in it. Maybe I'm not, but it's at least going to be more noticeable, and it's not annoying, because people put out tons and tons of content, and nowadays you can skip right over it. And let's also talk about who, like, one of the content kings is. Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, he puts out, and his team, I don't know, they probably put out 100 pieces of content a day. They have to at this point. And so it's not like I'm going to see all 100 pieces of that content and I'm not going to be annoyed by it, right? If I want to listen to it, I can stop and listen. If not, I'll keep going. But at least it's out there. At least that content is available for people to find. So we're always looking for listeners, right? We want people to check out our podcast. We want them to find it. But your next listener isn't going to love your podcast if they don't hear it or don't see it. So get your content out there. Spend multiple days getting it out there. Let people know that you have a podcast. So here's the awesome thing about podcasting and the tools that are available out there. So I record my podcast on riverside.fm. That's where I do the recording and the editing of my podcast. And there's also another program that I use to help with clips, is called Opus Clip. These are paid software that you do pay for. Takes away so much of the work and does so much of the work for you that it is worth it. Okay? It is worth to pay money to have a program, to have a software, take a 30-minute podcast and give you 10 clips that you can then put on social media. So it is worth it to pay for software when you're at that point. I highly recommend it. I'm not getting paid by those companies to tell you this. I can't add the links though, and I'll put the links, I'll put those out. But Riverside to record and edit, and Riverside also does create clips for you. I'd use Opus Clip also because it gives me way more clips and more variety. So they both do that job, But if you just want something to start out with, Riverside is the place to start because it can do, like I said, record, and it can record just audio or audio and video, and it's got editing software built into it. So, and it will also create clips for you. The other cool thing about Riverside is it gives you title ideas, it gives you summaries, takeaways, all those things that you can add into the description on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, anywhere you publish your podcast. And so use your podcast, like one episode can create at least 10 pieces of content. And not even just clips and reels. You can get blog posts out of these. You could get an email. You could get a newsletter idea. You could get a LinkedIn post out of your podcast. And that also, again, is where Riverside can help step in because they do use AI. And you can ask Riverside on an episode and say, hey, help me come up with an idea for a LinkedIn post that will cater to small businesses. Put that in, and then it will help you outline that and figure out a post for LinkedIn. So everybody consumes content differently. We all do. Whatever that looks like. Some people like to read. I know that there's Instagram reels out there that have captions with 500 words in them. People like that. People like video. Some people like longer video. And I know for me, there's YouTube videos I'll watch that are like 30 minutes. It's like a TV show. People consume content every different way there is. And so try to think of all the ways that you can make content from your podcast to share. Even on Instagram, you could take your podcast and take your ideas and make them into a carousel post on Instagram. A carousel is where you can swipe through and there's like however many photos or slides you want. You can do that on Instagram, and that's another cool way to promote your podcast. And I would say if you are just beginning with your podcast, I know I just mentioned a ton of things. I don't want to stress you out, and don't overthink it. So what I mean by that is do your podcast, create content from your podcast, and I would say wherever you're most active, if you're most active on Instagram, then just create content for Instagram right now. Don't worry about the others. Like, don't worry about LinkedIn or Twitter or TikTok. If Instagram is your place, focus there, start there. And then over time, once it gets easier and you get quicker doing these things and making these things, then spread out your social media reach and go to those other platforms. And so I know that putting out content and putting out tons of content sounds overwhelming and maybe annoying, but you're not being repetitive. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as like just marketing, like you're trying to be recognized. And so don't think you're going to annoy people. Just put it out there because that's how people are going to recognize you, especially the way people consume content like I talked about. Because I guarantee you, I could put out 50, let's just say I had this podcast episode here. I could put out 50 pieces of content on Instagram. Odds are some people won't see it at all, any of those, because there's so much content out there. And it might not fit their algorithm for one thing. And the other thing they might see of those 50, maybe they see 3 pieces of it. So it's not like you're going to overwhelm somebody's feed with all of your stuff, unless it's your mom and she only follows you and your siblings, then she might get overwhelmed with all your stuff. But other than that, get it out there. Don't feel like it's too much. Don't feel like you're annoying people, because that's how you're going to get recognized. That's how your podcast is going to get heard. And that's how you're going to bring listeners in. So obviously social media is one way to get your voice and your podcast out there, but think of other things outside of the box to get your podcast out there that's not social media. And I know some of these ideas are crazy, but like I saw somebody had, a QR code on their car, a sticker of a QR code that was like, the size of, a baseball or something. And the QR code, you scan it, it took people to their Instagram page. But you could do that with your podcast. Create a QR code, put it on your laptop, on the back of your laptop, put it on your car, and that QR code takes people to your podcast. So that's one way. Cross promote. So like find somebody else in your niche that has a podcast, or just and invite them onto your podcast, and vice versa. Have someone on your podcast. If you're a realtor, have a mortgage broker on your podcast because they also have a podcast. They're going to talk about it too, and they're going to talk about you, and they're going to promote you. So there are tons and tons of ways to get your podcast out there that aren't just social media based. Because I know some people are overwhelmed by all the social media and, that kind of thing. And so there are other ways to get your voice out there. So think about those ways. And I would say, obviously, if you're, other than the social media side, just the relationships that you build outside of social media and in your business, in your work, whatever you do, you build relationships. Let people know. Like, if I was a realtor, I would have a podcast. That's a no-brainer. Like, I don't know why more realtors don't have podcasts. It's just a no-brainer to me. And so you have a podcast and you tell people, oh yeah, I have a podcast. I talk about, the market in Irvine, California once every other week. Every 2 weeks, I have my podcast. We talk about the market and what's happening and home sales and where's popular and the best schools and all that stuff. And so make those relationships with people and let people know that you have a podcast. And so I know for me, I thinking through this and like, why haven't I promoted my podcast? What am I hiding and why aren't I? And I think part of it is imposter syndrome, that we don't think we know what we're talking about. And so we don't want people to be like, oh, that guy, he's got a podcast, but he doesn't know what he's talking about. You do know what you're talking about, or you wouldn't be talking about it. Like, that's why you have a podcast, because you are an expert in whatever field that might be. I think some of the things too is you don't want to feel too salesy. Like, I don't want to annoy people. I don't want to feel like I'm trying to sell people on this podcast. So you can't worry about that. And so I think one way to get over those hurdles is to know like that you have a solution to people's problems. And that's why you're doing this podcast. Like, be confident in that. Be confident in knowing that you know what you're talking about, that you've been a realtor in Irvine, California for 10 years. You know what you're talking about. So have that confidence, do that. And so if you believe in your message and believe in yourself and know that what you're saying is a solution to someone's problem, then hiding that isn't cool. You're being selfish. Share that information because you have a solution to a problem. Let people know. So I've got 3 action steps for you, and they're not overwhelming. So 3 action steps just to do this month, the next 60 days or 30 days. Do this if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're just starting out. The first one is choose one platform to promote your content on. Just choose one. Don't overwhelm yourself with 4 social media platforms. So choose the one you're most comfortable with, the one you're on the most, and the one you engage with people on the most. Do that. With your podcast, just try to find 3 pieces of content you can share from your podcast episode, each episode. Don't overthink it. Don't try to overdo it and say, oh, I need 10 from this. Just start simple. Start with 3. Over time, you'll be able to get more and more, and it'll get easier and easier. But just start with 3. And then the third thing I wrote down is track what performs. Like, what performs well? Is it carousels on Instagram? Is it a 10-second reel? Or is it a 90-second reel? Like, what's getting the most traction? What's the most shareable? What's getting people to engage in your content? Figure that out too. So those 3 things, okay? And like I said, promotion, it's not easy sometimes for some people. Like, even for me, I don't like promoting myself. I wish somebody else could do it for me, but I know that I have to do it. And so with that being said, it's going to get easier and easier every time you do it. Just like recording, just like editing, the same thing with promoting your podcast. It's going to get easier the more and more you do it. So just remember, with your podcast, the content builds the value and the promotion builds the audience. So don't just hit publish, right? Don't just hit publish. Promote your podcast like the next person who comes across it needs it more than anything else in the world. Because maybe they do, depending on what you're talking about. So if you are starting a podcast or you know somebody starting a podcast, actually share this episode with them. Please, again, this is kind of my promotion here, but share this episode. Let them know that this is helping you and subscribe. That's all I'm asking. Nothing crazy. I'm doing this for you. Again, I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm just trying to add value because I see a problem of people podcasting, not staying with it, not being consistent. And I see people who don't have a podcast who should have a podcast. That's why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I just want to help people start podcasts. Thanks for listening.